Well, as you can see, I've been busy. I just went over and sharpened up the chain again. I got to get it all clamped down and change my adjustments again as I get 2 more logs here to cut the first slab off of. I'll show you how I found a little faster way to do that in a minute. My buddies, hey, come here. I didn't forget you. No. You know, the chainsaw running all the time, they kind of stay a little ways away, but had that American three-toed woodpecker up there hammering away. He doesn't seem to mind me being here. I didn't start cutting each morning until the grouse have kind of finished their grit picking. I don't want to get on the wrong side of them. They're my entertainment. So anyway, this all is, and there's 8 more over there. They're the 1.25 inch roof boards. Figured maybe I might need up to 70, depending on how much I trim up the live edge on them and get it trimmed out. But I'm up to over 30 now. Probably if I end up with 60, probably all I really need. And the porch overhang, I'm not too concerned about having enough for that. I can always finish those up later. That's no problem. But now I'm ready to set up 2 more logs here. Usually I get a lighter log and I can raise it up on the platform here. And then the heavier logs I roll up just up on top of one other log so I'm not way down low. But every time I work along here, the system changes and changes again just a little bit. Hey, buddy. I'll leave this here for them. They'll find it. Some of these are just heavier than I want to drag over there and then raise up. So if I get them up on top of these other little logs, it was easier when Drone Man David was here the other day. Get a balance point. Won't be as much to lift. There we go. Now I'll pick out a lighter one to drag over here. leave the dirt side up. That way I'm cutting underneath all that. Keep the dirt out of my saw chain. I'll get this cleaned up, get it set up for cut. Now this log is on the smallest end of what I've been hauling in to cut, and total diameter is 7.5 inches, and I think to get any width of board out of there, I think if I get 3 1/2 inch boards out of the middle, that's the best I can hope for on this one. I've been getting 4 and 5, but this one's going to be a 3. So what it amounts to then is, say if I got 4.5 inches of actual cutting I want to do, if I just put, instead of all this measuring, if I just put a screw right there, now I measure from my center to that, and I'm going to say we're going to go with 2.5 inches. Well, let's make it legal. It's actually 2 1/4. So 2 1/4. I'll go to the other end, and I'll measure up from the center 2 1/4, and I'll put a screw there also. Now we're at the fatter end. I'm going to measure up that 2 1/4 from the center. I'll put a screw right there. Now I know exactly where my 2x4 that's going to hold my ladder. My ladder's going to go on top of this. And now that I did it that way, I know where it's going to go. I'll put a level on here so we're pretty close to when I shoot the first screw. Down at this end, I got a lot more meat because the butt end is so much thicker. When we get to the other end, then it gets a little trickier, trying to get it stable. With that board sitting on that nail there, almost like giving me a third hand. And these are the roof boards, so I'm not quite as fussy on having those perfect like I did my floorboards. But okay, now we've got that. Now we're going to lay the ladder on and go attach the other end. My board's getting pretty chewed up. Pretty good. Level all the way, and now I'll put a couple shims underneath so the ladder doesn't get chattering when we're cutting. We have all these oddball pieces around, and when I'm on a shim this, now I just find one, especially if it's got a taper on it, I can just tap that in there. Now I'll put a screw in there to hold that, and it makes the center of that ladder real solid. I always take my guide screw out. I don't need it there, and I'm less apt to nick it with the saw blade when I try to get right underneath that 2x4 with my cut. Because now that we have all that going, I'll measure from the rail where the going to slide, and if I go 6.5 inches. Yeah, if I set the, I'll go 6 5/8. I'll set the Granberg mill to take at 6 5/8, and then I'll cut right below all the screws and all the metal, and I'll get that top worthless slab off there, and then we can get some real wood. I loosened these bolts right here, and I've slid this rail. It's marked on my bar right here, 6 5/8 inches. So now I know that if I go to this centerpiece and I go down, I got my 6 5/8 inches that cut's going to make. So that's all set up. We're all fueled up and oiled up. We're ready to go do the cut. I've removed all the screws that I put in there, so now I can get the ladder off. The shims will fall away. And this top piece goes on the firewood pile. Now I can come back and bring the mill right down this surface, take off my 3 boards. I've had numerous comments that I need to sharpen my chain because I'm not making chips, all I'm making is sawdust. Well, I did a little research on that, and that is the nature of a ripping chain. The teeth are such that each little chip that we think about is actually taken off in 3 different pieces. And plus, getting kind of technical here, but even these chains are made, when they make them, the raker is a little higher than we're normally used to, because the whole idea is not to work that chainsaw too hard when it's cutting through all that wood. It's really hard on a chainsaw, so they've got it that you're going to make sawdust. But you end up with a really nice, even, thin kerf going through there, and your saw doesn't get overworked. As we look at the Granberg ripping chain, you'll see that you have a half a tooth, and you've got a regular tooth, and you go back to a half on each side, back to the irregular teeth, but it's alternated along, and these narrow side teeth like that cut a slice up the side, and then the other regular tooth comes along and takes all the wood out. And so we end up with this much finer chips, almost sawdust, that you've been seeing in all these pictures.